If you're not from Dallas and don't know Deep Ellum, it's a gritty, historic, kind of wild place. It's known for its nightlife. It's known for definitely being a little off the grid. And the fact that I put my first store here was kind of revolutionary. I mean, I was a renegade. People thought I was crazy, but I loved this area. I loved the spirit. I loved the age. I loved the grit. In fact, that's kind of what attracted me to it. And full transparency, I knew nothing about retail. So I think it kind of worked in my favor because I was, you know, a little naive, but full of gusto and energy and excitement, and I've never been afraid of a challenge. And so the story of finding these buildings is quite long and a whole nother series, but this was definitely the last stop on my road to retail. If this one didn't work out, I was done. I had tried so many locations that didn't work out and actually hired a friend instead of a realtor to help me find something, who, fun fact, is now in the band Perry and a rock star in Nashville. But I think that's a piece of it where he was creative, he was also kind of edgy and cool and knew what I wanted. And so we actually were touring a building across the street. And when he took me inside, I said, John, I love this building, but where are my employees gonna park? Like, how do I make this thing work? Where are customers gonna park? Because Deep Ellum doesn't have a lot of parking. And he goes, actually, there's a cool building across the street with a parking lot. Maybe we could work out like a lease deal where you could use his parking lot. I was like, okay, well, I'm maybe interested, but yeah, see what you find out. So I had left, and honestly, I was pretty deflated. Like I said, this was at least the 20th building I had toured over years and years. And he called me back and said, get your butt down here right now. This guy is about to put this building on the market with the parking lot, and we need to get this thing. So I came back down here, met with John, and they opened the doors, and it felt like home. It wasn't that it was beautiful or necessarily a dreamy space at the time, but it was an old printing factory. And if you know my background, I was a journalist and worked at a newspaper where I could smell the printing smell, hear the engines humming of the machines, and that's what was happening in here. And it just like was a warm blanket. I knew without a shadow of a doubt I had to have these buildings. Now, mind you, I didn't know how much they cost. I don't think anyone did, honestly. He was just putting them on the market, but I knew I had to make this happen. So the story is a long one. I almost lost these buildings. I'm not gonna get into all that. But what I'll say is it was a Hail Mary. I made it happen. And I'm so grateful it all worked out. I'm so grateful to the owners that gave me a chance to figure out this building, because Deep Ellum has kind of these titans in real estate, if you will, that own pretty much everything. And the fact I kind of swooped in under the radar was a miracle. To this day, people ask me how I got these buildings. But with that said, the owners became family. They actually came to the grand opening, and the best piece of the story and the sale was I got all of those old fixtures. So the tables where they laid out the labels they printed for paint cans, the actual racks they put the paint cans in, the old desks their father had, their old desks, they're all left behind and still to this day in our stores. And you know, I think back to all the reasons I love these buildings and all my favorite memories, and that's definitely it. It started as a family business. With me, it was a family business, and we really, really made this place a home. So I closed on the buildings in November of 2017. Fun fact, I was actually in Houston doing it remotely because we had a Dallas Flea, Houston Flea show going on. It was back in the day when I still had shows happening across the state of Texas, and really back in the day before we were a retail company. So these buildings are where things started to click for me, where they started to kind of crack, sizzle, and pop, figuring out kind of my business savviness, my why, what in the world I wanted to do with this concept I had dreamed up and loved, but really didn't know how to make it work, how to make it pay the bills, how to make it become something. So I remember signing papers in Houston, getting back to Dallas, and having really no money, but needing to do a ton of work to these buildings. And so I got a loan and started to be as scrappy and savvy as I could. I'll show you guys around the building, but a lot of the materials are things I repurposed or I found off the side of the street in Deep Ellum. There's old fixtures that friends would bring me, banisters that we used, crates I painted and put up as walls. Really did anything I could to open up the building with my very, very beer budget. But I think it's part of the story. It's why it's beautiful. It's why it has so much heart and soul. And it's really when I had to start getting to work. I had a big mortgage, I had employees, and I needed to figure out what this was gonna be. So I came down here every single day with my 2 kids and my dog. I mean, my kids were little at the time, to meet with the construction crew. Many of friends of mine that, did the sheetrock or hung the, walls or windows. I hired all the people I could that I knew and trusted, but was also in my budget, and we made magic happen. It was in June of 2018 that I opened this store, June 1st, to my friends, my family, our longtime customers, and it was our first, exposure to retail. It was our first store. People had wanted a store for so long when we had our markets. They would say, what if I have a baby shower or a wedding that day and I miss it? I don't want to wait 6 months or a year for your next market. And so the store was really my love letter to those customers to say, hey, you can come shop it all the time. Now with that said, I was still doing the events. My idea was always to do the event business and have this one store for those really die-hard fans. But in typical Flea Style fashion and in life, there was a major plot twist. We opened those doors. I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew the store was beautiful. I knew it had amazing product, and I knew I had a great team to help me figure it out. So back then, we were 100% consignment. I had no money to buy product, but also I had no means to buy product. I wasn't a buyer, I had no retail experience, and I didn't know how to even do that, honestly. But I always had style, I always had an eye. I was a lifestyle editor, and I knew how to curate, I knew how to collect, I knew how to pull it together and make it pretty. At this time, I was also still dabbling in interior decorating on the side. I was like the ultimate hustler of having multiple revenue streams, trying to make it all happen. And I just knew I could make it beautiful in a place people wanted to come. I remember as a kid, I used to go in Anthropologie and just stand there and look around and be like, I want to live here. Like, I want to have my bed right there and wake up here every morning. I loved how it felt, how it smelled, the product, all the texture. And I wanted to do that, but in a more modern way. I wanted to do it with, things that were from makers and shakers and collectors that, people were really starting to grab onto. This was before flea markets and pop-up markets, and definitely hat bars were a thing. And I was really, really kind of odd. I mean, people thought, I'm gonna buy used things, I'm gonna buy an old rug, I'm gonna buy, someone's grandma's jewelry. And I'm like, yeah, and you're gonna love it. So people did love grandma's necklace, the concept did work, and I was shocked. I was excited, but I was also like, now what? So I started, getting to work on retail, figuring it out, not just hiring my friends and people I enjoyed being with, but people with real acumen in the industry. And we started figuring it out, and it was really apparent that retail was the path. And it's a long story with how everything became 8 stores and 2 restaurants and a bar and all of that. But what I'll say is connections are everything, relationships are everything, and I've always been really good about keeping my network close and touching base with people. And back in the day, I did decorating for the Jones family, and I actually had them in the building showing them what I was doing, and they said, we need all of this up at the Star. And I said, well, what's the Star? And they said, it's our new shopping development up in Frisco, which, if you don't know, Frisco is about 30 minutes north from here. And I said, I just opened this. Mind you, this was August of 18, I'm sorry. I had just opened this 2 months earlier. And they said, well, just come check it out. So I did, and the rest is history. I got going on store number 2, took all the risks in the world, but knew that if retail was my thing, I was gonna commit, I was gonna open more stores, and I kind of needed to support my vision. I needed more people, I needed more help, and I needed more real estate. So this building is so important to me because it was the first retail store for the company, but also it opened all the doors for everything we are today. So we opened the Star store in 2019. A crazy thing called COVID happened shortly thereafter and really changed the trajectory of everything. We stayed open when a lot of companies couldn't because we had a restaurant inside our Frisco store. Being essential really saved us. and put us on a spotlight where a lot of people were closing. We were thriving and open, which opened the doors to our stores in Fort Worth, Galleria pop-up, and the rest is history. But we always remained in Deep Ellum. We stayed here as a store until construction started in our neighborhood, where we knew we needed to be safe for our customers. It's quite a large citywide project that is several years long, and so in protection of our team and our customers, we knew we needed to shut down this store and move it down the street to Dallas Farmers Market. But we remained here as a headquarters team, as a corporate team, and really got creative. So the space I'm sitting in now was once the store. A couple years ago, we changed it up to create a distribution center, which was the best we could do with what we had. This was all lined with racks. I opened up the side, put in dock doors, you name it. We created a creative space over here behind me for our custom product that we love and make for all of our stores. And then most of us moved over to the other building, which I'll show you guys, where we did our marketing and operations and all the things with HR and all the things it takes to run a business. So these buildings started as one thing, but really ended as something very different only 7 years later. And I think it shows how creative we are, how easily we pivot and stay positive. And we couldn't have done it without the backdrop and foundation of these buildings in Deep Ellum. I was approached about a year ago by somebody who loved them just as much as me and made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And so at the time, construction was really heavy here, still is, and it was becoming more and more difficult and challenging for us to physically get in the building, drive our containers up to deliver product. And in protection now of not just the customer, but really my team, I knew I needed to close these doors and open up another one for the company to really evolve and have the space it deserved. So I've luckily had a year to kind of close this chapter because of the structure of the close of the deal. But I'm sitting here my last day, and I get emotional looking around. I put everything I had into these buildings, and these were the walls that supported me in my divorce, and kind of everything that's built me as a person and to create the world that is Flea Style. And I'm just forever grateful. And I'm also really excited. I'm excited about the next chapters. I'm excited about all the things that's built for us, but what we get to do now with the space we really need to hold all the hats and how far we've come, and have proper offices and not be officing in an old fitting room. I mean, we really did that. So, I'm not sad, I'm grateful, and I am giddy about the future of Flea Style, and forever, ever will hold this place so special in my heart.